Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim. In the name of Allah, the Merciful, the Compassionate. All praises to Allah, the Creator of the universes and their Sustainer, the Provider of believers and unbelievers. And may His choicest blessings be on the seal of His prophets, the last of His messengers and His holy progeny. And in particular, may His incessant blessings ever continue to flow on that beloved daughter of the Holy Prophet, on Sayyidah Fatimas Zahra Salamullahi alayha. We've been discussing the speech that she delivered in the court of the Khalif upon the seizure of Fadak, the plantation that her illustrious father, the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him and his progeny, had gifted to her in his lifetime. We had reached a stage at which, having proclaimed virtues and qualities of Allah glorified and exalted, she recites the Shahada itself and says, وَأَشْهَدُ أَنْ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهُ وَحْدَهُ لَا شَرِيكَ لَهُ. And I testify that there is no God except Allah. He is one. وَحْدَهُ لَا شَرِيكَ لَهُ, and has no partner of any type at all. Now, that pronunciation of the Shahada, everybody knew that she was a Muslim and therefore must have recited the Shahada. But that reconfirmation carries its own thawab, and that is why we have traditions which says reciting La ilaha illallah every day carries great thawab indeed. And even in Salah, we recite the Shahada after every prayer. At the end of every prayer in the Salam, in the last Salam, there is always Shahada. And this is unanimously accepted by all Muslims. All Muslims perform and recite that Shahada in every Salah. She did it publicly. Now, there must be a deep meaning to that, because there was nobody in that audience who did not believe that she was a Muslim. She did not have to proclaim the Shahada. But she did so to establish her claim, that her claim is being made by a Muslimah. It is not made by any ordinary citizen, but a citizen who is a Muslimah, who has special rights in the Muslim Commonwealth. However, she also wanted to discuss the Tawheed of Allah glorified and exalted. That is the subject she was discussing already, as we have seen in the last two sittings on this subject. And that is the subject that she continues with. Important words. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. I testify that there is no God except Allah. So Fadak is not the God. Worldly property is not the God. That is a point she succinctly makes. God is Allah, and there is none, and there is none, la sharika lah, and has no partner at all of any shape or form. Money, property, worldly possessions, worldly station, worldly status are not concomitants of the godliness of Allah glorified and exalted. They are bestowed by Allah Himself in His mercy, if He so pleases. But the Godship is only of Allah, la sharika lah, and who has no partner in any form or shape. Then she says a fantastic thing, a thing that is as it was singularly her own benchmark of her speech, her hallmark of her speech. Having set out that Shahada, La ilaha illallah, wahdahu la sharika lah, she says, Kalimatun ja'ala al-ikhlasu ta'wilaha. It is a statement that Allah has made sincerity depend on it. Sincerity is the meaning, ta'wilaha is the meaning, is the interpretation, essence of that shahada. Kalimatun, it's a sentence. Ja'al al-ikhlas ta'wilaha, of which he made sincerity the fulcrum, the meaning of it. In other words, put in other words, if there is no sincerity in it, then the statement has not been made. The meaning of that statement lies in its sincerity. If we say La ilaha illallah and have 10 gods in mind, then it has no meaning. Ja'al al-ikhlas, sincerity, meaning what one says, that there is no God except Allah, then money is not God, then position is not God, then power is not God, then authority and sovereignty is not God, then health is not God. Allah gives health out of his own mercy and out of his own grace, and he gives wealth, and he gives wisdom, and he gives knowledge. All that comes through him. So La ilaha, there is no God except him. But what is important is that there should be sincerity in that belief. Otherwise, there are a number of people who go around saying La ilaha illallah, and yet one sees them worshipping money, for example, or worshipping status, or worshipping strength, or worshipping any other thing. Well, what is the sense in it? Allah, glorified and exalted, has kept his status at such a unique level, and indeed he deserves that position, that he is not prepared to countenance or to suffer any partnership with any other God in any form or manner at all. La sharika lah. There can be no partnership between him and another God. There cannot be a son who is also a God. There cannot be any other entity which can be a God. His position is lam yalid wa lam yulad wa lam yakun lahu kufuwan ahad, as we have already seen. There can be no partner of any shape or form. Hasbunallah, to us Allah is sufficient. Wa ni'mal wakil, and he is the best guardian. He is the best support. The lady, illustrious lady, therefore says that وَجَعَلَ الْإِخْلَاص, and he kalimatun جَعَلَ الْإِخْلَاص تَأْوِيلَهَا, and he ascribed, it's a sentence, into which he described sincerity as its meaning. In other words, if there is no sincerity, the statement has no meaning at all. Because the moment you connect anything with the Godship of Allah, glorified and exalted, La ilaha illallah has gone. Then because and this is why one finds that in that kalima it starts with a negative. It starts with La ilaha, there is no God, illallah, except Allah. So any connection, any association with any other Godship is not accepted by Allah, glorified and exalted. And that is one sin he says he will not forgive. He says he'll forgive all other sins. Shirk is a sin he will not forgive. And a person guilty of shirk will not have even the aroma of paradise from a distance of 100 years of a journey. So there is no point in lengthening that discussion. The foundation of it is ikhlas, and the way she puts it, it's so beautiful. The way she describes the importance of sincerity in it is so vital. She says kalimatun, it is a kalima, it is a sentence. We call it a kalima. When we recite it, we recited the kalima. But she says it's a kalima in which kalimatun ja'al al-ikhlas ta'wilaha. Its meaning lies in its sincerity. If there is no sincerity in it, then you have not recited the kalima at all. The depth of that sentence is frightening. Because if there is no sincerity in it, then you have not recited, then it is meaningless. Then it is meaningless to even enunciate that proposition, La ilaha illallah, if you are not sincere about it. If there are other ilah in addition, ma'adallahi ta'ala, to Allah glorified and exalted. So the meaning of it is that the moment you ascribe any other godship in partnership to that of Allah glorified or exalted, you cease to be a Muslim. Then you have not recited the kalima at all. That is the point she is making. So if there is anybody who associates power and position with godship of Allah glorified and exalted, worships Allah and yet worships power, worships position, worships property, worships wealth, then he ceases to be a Muslim altogether. That is the seriousness. That is the level at which Bibi Zahra alayha salam sets up the condition, the prerequisite of being a Muslim in the first place. Otherwise, one is not a Muslim at all. So she says, Kalimatun ja'ala al-ikhlas ta'wilaha wa dhammana al-qulub mawsulaha. And the hearts, qulub, the hearts, have undertaken dhammana, have guaranteed its continuity. The moment you say La ilaha illallah, this is a great favor from Allah, glorified and exalted. And it is elucidated by this illustrious lady in her speech, not usually found in other speeches, not usually found in other material on Tawheed. She says that the hearts that Allah glorified and exalted has created, وَضَمَّنَ الْقُلُوبِ, those hearts that Allah has created guarantee the continuation of the continuity of this ikhlas, of this sincerity in La ilaha illallah. In other words, the moment you say La ilaha illallah, what a depth that is contained in this enunciation of this illustrious lady. The moment you say La ilaha illallah, the heart that Allah glorified and exalted has created guarantees its continuity, guarantees its sincerity. In other words, when we then are found to be worshipping money, if we are then found to be worshipping status, if we are then found to be worshipping position or power, then we are disregarding the heart. We are disobeying the heart. We are ignoring the heart and giving that other entity, which comes from the devil, greater importance than the kalima itself, because the kalima is supported, is ensured, is guaranteed by the heart itself. In other words, and Quran says this also. This is supported by Surah Shams, for example, that ayah in which Allah says that He has created within man, in other words, in his heart, the sanction in acceptance of Allah glorified and exalted. وَنَفْسٍ وَمَا سَوَّاهَا فَأَلْهَمَهَا فُجُورَهَا وَتَقْوَاهَا. Well, what is a greater fujur than breaching the Tawheed, making something else a partner to the Godship of Allah glorified and exalted, who has no partner or can have no partner. Indeed, how can he have? Because he created money, he gives money. He created position, he gives position. How can that which he creates and he allots and he assigns and he distributes, how can that be a partner with him? That is nonsensical. It's not even unreasonable for a human being to accept that position. A human being ought to know that money that he is after is given by Allah, glorified and exalted. And hasbi al-raziqu min al-marzuqeen, we say, for me, the giver of that money is sufficient, rather than those who have themselves been given that money by Allah, glorified and exalted. That is the level at which the Tawheed of Allah, glorified and exalted, is placed. So وَنَفْسٍ وَمَا سَوَّاهَا فَأَلْهَمَهَا فُجُورَهَا وَتَقْوَاهَا قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ زَكَّاهَا. Well, Allah Ta'ala explains that in the Holy Book also. This illustrious lady puts it so beautifully, saying that the moment you recite that kalima and you become a Muslim, then the heart guarantees its continuity. وَضَمَّنَ الْقُلُوبِ مَوْصُولَهَا, that the heart guarantees its continuity, that you will remain a person who will be sincere to that kalima, La ilaha illallah. If one then finds one is acting in a way in which other things get priority, become gods, as it were. And this concept is frightening, because the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, and his progeny, in his Khutbatul Wida, was asked, when he mentioned that in the last days what he fears most is shirk. And Salman it was who turned around and said to him, Ya Rasulullah, shirk, we have already abolished all the idols. We have smashed them, all the 360 that are that were in the Kaaba. So where are the idols now? And the Holy Prophet said, Salman, at that time the dirham will be the idol. Men will worship money, will seek to get money in any way, whether lawful or unlawful, whether by means accepted and permitted by Allah, glorified and exalted, or not permitted by Allah, glorified and exalted. So that forecast is given to us of money, of dirham being made a god, so that we become conscious and we become cautious in these days of not making wealth position, because wealth brings position, position brings wealth, a place of godship. And godship remains exclusively within the domain of Allah, glorified and exalted. So the moment one finds that one gives superiority to these worldly matters of greed, then that guarantee given by the heart of continuing the sincerity in the worship of Allah is diminished, and keeps getting diminished until it vanishes altogether. So Allah, glorified and exalted, according to this illustrious lady, and what a beautiful teaching, has even guaranteed to us assistance by making provision for it in our hearts, that we continue to remain sincere in belief in his unity, in belief of the oneness of Allah, glorified and exalted, in which there is no partner at all. وَأَنَارْ فِي التَّفْكِيرِ مَعْقُولَهَا, and he illuminated the mind. He illuminated the mind with the rationality of the Tawheed. In other words, when Allah is an entity that cannot be seen, it has no body, it has no shape. He creates bodies, he creates shapes, as we will come to see in perhaps the next sitting. So if that is the entity, that he cannot even be seen, he cannot even be imagined, because he is beyond our imagination. And that is a great error into which some Muslims have fallen, trying to imagine Allah and giving him shape, giving him a leg, ma'adallah ta'ala, or giving him a hand, or he has no hand, he has no shape. When we talk of hand, as we have already seen, as we have seen in our discussions on Dua Kumail, those are metaphorical statements. They are statements which only tend to show personalities of people who can act as though they are the hands of Allah, as though they are the eyes of Allah, glorified and exalted. They are not, because Allah has no eye, has no hand. And I say this because if there are people who have not heard that commentary on Dua Kumel, then a brief explanation. So the position is that the mind is given proof by Allah, glorified and exalted. Cogent, intellectual, intelligent proofs which the mind accepts, and so the mind sees Allah, the mind accepts Allah, the mind understands Allah, glorified and exalted. Because how can Allah, glorified and exalted, ask us to worship Him if we do not understand His entity at all? And this is why when a person goes to Amir al-Mu'mineen, alayhi salam, and asks him, Ya Ali, I see you worshipping so ardently, but have you seen this Allah whom you worship? His immediate answer was, but would I worship Him if I had not seen Him? So the questioner says, so Ya Ali, you have seen Allah? He says, yes, but not with these eyes. It is not with these eyes that you can see Allah. Allah is not an entity who is visible with these eyes. You see Allah with the eye of your heart. This is how he has seen Allah. And this is why he is able to say that even if the curtain that exists between man and Allah is smashed, the curtain is removed altogether, my faith in Allah would not be enhanced. That is because, and this is exactly what this illustrious lady explains, and this is where the khutbah of Fadak reaches its peak. The illustrious lady uses strong words and says, وَأَنَارَ فِي التَّفْكِيرِ, illuminated, Allah illuminated our thoughts and our mind, مَا by the rationality of divinity. That is the rationality which Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam had absorbed in its fullness, in its perfection, in its entirety, and hence worshipped Allah as though he saw Him. And that is why when he stood for prayer, nothing around him existed. Only the essence, the presence of Allah, glorified and exalted, existed, whom he was worshipping and to whom he was making his ruku and to whom he was making his sajda. Hence, even Abdurrahman ibn Muljim, when he decided to kill Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, thought the best time to kill him was in his prayer. And this is why Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam was killed ultimately when he was in his prayer. It is when he was and that also in sajda, as he was lifting his head from sajda, Abdurrahman ibn Muljim thought that was his best time to kill Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. Otherwise, where was the person who could combat him in a duel or otherwise? So the illustrious lady explains that Allah, glorified and exalted, when he does not accept partnership with any entity at all, when he says that he has kept in the heart provision to make sure that the sincerity in Tawheed is perpetuated to the last breath. Then she says, but that sincerity is perpetuated in the heart because the mind has been illuminated. وَأَنَارْ فِي التَّفْكِيرِ مَعْقُولَهَا, and the rationality of Tawheed is illuminated in the mind by Allah, glorified and exalted. Allah does not create obligations without making provisions for it, without making it possible for us to understand and to accept and act on that thought. He says in the holy book, "La yukallifullahu nafsan illa wus'aha." Allah does not impose an obligation on any person except to the extent to which he can carry that obligation. And so to understand Tawheed, particularly when Allah is not visible, when you cannot even imagine Him, you cannot even describe Him, as we shall see in few moments, then He has created provisions by which we can remain stable and cogent on Tawheed. and our hearts help us in that function, and our minds rationalize the existence of Allah, gives us proof that our minds accept, because man will not accept anything that his mind does not accept. And that is the first provision that Allah, glorified and exalted, made in us to understand Him, to get near to Him, to know of His existence, His power, His authority. And the illustrious lady sets out provision, in a beautiful way. May Allah give us the good fortune of understanding His Tawheed through these words of this illustrious lady. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.